Hello and welcome to the People Space podcast with me, Winston Mavor. I'm so glad and excited that you can find time to once again have an interactive session with us. Today is very special because we will be looking at land administration, and joining me to be able to have conversations on this important topic that cuts across most, if not all, development sectors is none other than Lucy Musonda, who is a legal researcher at the Center for Trade Policy and Development. Lucy, welcome to the People Space podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we've got a tradition, Lucy, on this platform. Every guest that comes here, we know that you lawyers have your own jargon and know what you do when it comes to the courts of law. But we want to know a little bit about Lucy outside the scope of your work. So let's start there.
Okay. Lucy is a young lady who likes to here and there read. Uh, she enjoys dancing. Yeah, salsa and kizomba. Yeah, yeah, salsa and kizomba. But also, I watch movies. I like going for walks, jogging, and a bit of workout here and there, and a few interactions, social interactions with friends. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So when can I sign up for some dancing lessons?
After this podcast.
We'll discuss the details, but I hope it's the amount or the fee is not too high though.
Well, we'll take into account time, energy, and all other costs.
Time.
Yes.
Okay, Lucy. So let's start and just get into our conversation. So to start, I'd just like you to briefly describe the scale and importance of large-scale land-based investments in Zambia, including mining, agribusiness, carbon land and use investments, and how they fit into the Zambians' economic structure overall.
Okay. Yeah, indeed, these are important investments. And at the core of this investment is land. Like you have said, it cuts across almost all sectors. So definitely it's important to look at how they fit into the economy. And when you speak of large scale land based investments, we are talking about mining, which we are really thriving on. Like we have seen how reports are coming across that is contributing significantly to the economy's growth. But also we have got agriculture, and we have seen how the government is being allocating certain pieces of land towards farm blocks, specifically for farming. And we have also seen the interest in carbon trading, and this is obviously coming from conserving forests and capturing the carbon and trading it with other countries. And Zambia is now starting to participate in these processes. So definitely they contribute. Significantly to the growth of the economy. And however, like I mentioned, it's land at the center of this. So while they are contributing significantly to the growth, it's important to look at how the communities that are hosting these investments are performing. For example, if we talk about mining, how are they? How are these mining investments promoting or benefiting the communities that are hosting them? If we talk about farming, do we see collaboration between commercial farmers and subsistence farmers? How are subsistence farmers benefiting? Because we say that subsistence farmers actually contribute significantly to the food security in Zambia. And we talk about carbon trading, for example, it's communities who are prevented from going later to have access to the forest where they could cut trees, they could collect firewood for their livelihoods, sustainability. But all these changes, so how do those communities benefit, or how are they impacted by these investments in as much as we're trying to grow the economy? So, yeah, those are things we should look at, to the extent to which we grow the economy and to the extent to which our communities are benefiting at macro level.
I love the fact that you've brought out a very interesting connection between land. In fact, I would call it an intricate connection between land, which is at the center, which is the backbone of Zambia's economic, investment. You cited mining, which supports our GDP greatly. It's land based,
Yes.
and people also have direct interaction with the same land, and striking a balance is something that I really like. And I just want you to expound a little bit on that. Have we done well as a country in terms of ensuring that we strike a balance between the massive investments that are land based which we can't run away from for the sustenance of our economy and ensuring that the ordinary Zambians at the same time are not left behind? Have we done well as a country? If not, what are some of the things that you can, mention that we can improve on?
Okay. I think to that extent, when we look at it from a national or economy perspective, yes, we would get reports that mining has contributed significantly to the growth of the economy, to the GDP. But then when we get down to real communities who are hosting those mining activities or mining companies, we see few developments. Yes, we have seen, for example, hospitals, clinics actually being built. We have seen schools, small schools. Some of the areas we have visited from my work, we have seen small schools that are being built, and maybe a house for a teacher who resides in that place. We have seen roads being improved for certain areas, of course, but host communities, uh, we find them facing challenges such as displacement. Like, when a mining investor comes into a community, and if they are not well, if they do not engage their communities adequately to say, this is the aim of the project. We have come here to mine, but we understand this is your land, this is where you have been cultivating. So for us to work together, we need to compensate you this much, or at least tell us the value of your land. What crops are there, and for how long have you been staying here? So that, in as much as we're trying to compensate you, we cover you enough to be able to start or pick it up from where you left off here. And also, this compensation should extend to the point that it gets them back in a position they were before the investments came in. Yeah, because they were living a certain kind of life. So this is why we need to strike a balance between it, mining, for example, or any other large-based investment contributing to the growth of the economy, but also not leaving behind the communities. Yeah, the communities really need to be taken into account, especially with regards to equitable benefit sharing, and also the land itself, like environmental management. How are we managing the land after the activities have occurred? Is the land Could the land be used in the same manner it would be used if the mining activity didn't occur, or at least has it been left in a at least better state? It couldn't be exactly how it was found, but at least in a better state that it could be used again, because it would depreciate. And then what do we do with the land that has no value? Yeah.
All right. So, given that the, resources, for example, mining itself, are finite, and we know that at some point we'll definitely have to look elsewhere. What risks does this pose on communities? And maybe perhaps, at your discretion, what other alternatives can we start looking at to ensure that communities remain sustainable when it comes to economic benefits?
Okay. Yeah, it's important to note that they are finite indeed, because, like I mentioned, we are talking about investing in land, but also we are talking about mineral exploration and mining. So this means that once we extract that gold, we extract that copper, it's not going back. So what are we going to do with the copper that we extract? And how are we going to make sure that as we extract that copper, it doesn't just get exported and we get our taxes and we feel like we have made some contribution to the economy's growth in a short term? We need to look at it from a longer term period, because and this calls for having strategies such as the reinvestment strategies. When we extract, what we get from such extractions, how are we investing it back so that in the near future, when we run out of copper, we've got somewhere to point to that these are the results of the investment that we did. But also for communities, it now takes us to the issue I talked about, compensation, but also equitable benefit sharing. How are those communities who are in close proximity with the mining areas, how are they being covered to the extent that when the mining activities are done, they are not left out? If we're talking about employment creation, what sort of jobs are those being created? The quality of the jobs, and if mining is done, what happens to those? So it also goes beyond providing, for example, if it's employment just in the mining sector, those could those people in those communities could be offered activities or skills that are beyond the mining industry. Because if mining is done in that area, then it means it's either they relocate to another, but in that community where they relocate to, there are also people who are expecting to have the same access to employment, because it's now the mining is now taking place in their community. So it's good to look beyond the nature of the jobs that are being created. Is it just mining related, or it's the skills beyond that, but also how the benefits are being shared and how this compensation is being allocated to communities to ensure that it is sustainable enough to give them where to start from. If they're to continue farming in another place, it should be adequate to cover for that. And we're also talking about ensuring that the environment is well managed after the mining.
I love the fact that you've broadened it in a way that, in as much as the benefits that are deriving from this particular economic activity must be the ones where we explore the opportunities for diversification. So, as a country, we've heard this diversification tone for a very long time. I think the majority of us, most of us, have been born in this room. Of course, not the whole nation, but in this room, we are born hearing the term diversification from the Kaunda era up until today. And do you think that where diversification is concerned, we are really putting the money where our mouth is as a country? Because, like you said, creating jobs that will remain after the mining is gone obviously requires some sort of investments in other sectors and other areas. Are we putting our money where our mouth is?
I think only to a less extent. To a larger extent, we are neglecting that aspect, because what we see is, I think we have seen communities which are hosting mining. They are way far from doing better than how maybe Lusaka is doing. And I'm not saying that the development that we're seeing in Lusaka is exactly how it should look like in other communities, but at least it should be something that's, when you go there, you say, okay, this community is rich in copper. It's got cobalt. And so evidence should be there to show somehow. I shouldn't just be able to find a small school or a small market that this was built by a mining investor. It should be beyond that. Even communities should be able to, participate in other form of services, should be able to offer other services, businesses. They should be able to provide businesses to those actually investors who are coming. And this is because it could be as a result that the investor has actually involved or sort of engaged the community itself in terms of what developments would you like to see? What kind of help or support or actually skills would you like us to offer? That kind of conversation should be there before the investment occurs, and that's how we can even actually, even to some extent, obtain diversification. Yeah, but if we leave it all up to the investor to do their own thing, like whether it's a large or a small artisanal small scale mining, to just go there and they promise people jobs, they promise people compensation in case of any displacement, they promise people schools. How are we holding them accountable? If we don't hold them accountable, then we are basically giving away our being resources and only returning maybe the corporate tax or the royalties and licenses fees. That will go, yes, to the economy at a national level as something that we would have obtained, but to our people, it doesn't mean anything if the benefits don't trickle down to them.
Before, as we continue on mining, there's just something that has come across my mind, which speaks to reality, and I know that in our communities we've seen this. I would just like to get your independent thoughts on this. I've seen lots of people that go buy houses, okay? When we talk about displacement, obviously compensation with consent. This nationality will come and buy your house, okay? They give you money. But at the same time, if you look at Kalingalinga, the development that is going on in there, houses are being bought, turned into other, uses, boarding houses, whatever. But you rarely get to see, because we're talking about investment and sustainability
Yeah.
for the Zambians themselves. But I've seen there's a missing gap, whilst we're talking about the issue of land. Because someone said, if you give up your land, you're giving up your power. So people are put in a position where they're giving up their power with consent, they are compensated for it. But you discover that at the end of the day, that money they are given, there's no proper investment. So when we talk about land administration overall, CTPD plays a key role in terms of advocacy and this. Do you think that in the advocacy work with other network members that are also championing this agenda, we should factor in a component of financial literacy education so that when these people do these transactions, they don't just lose their land and at the same time fail to economically sustain themselves in the long run?
That's absolutely correct. And I think it's what, um, in other terms, I would call it, we need to have free prior informed consent. This is where an investor or any mining person with a license goes to the community, or anyone who is maybe just not mining. There are other large scale based investments. Yes. And they go to the communities. That land, like I said, it's occupied by people who have been using it for their particular reason, and they have got a house, even no matter how small it is, built on that. So you're going to go to them. I've got intention to invest in this piece of land because maybe there's copper, or because I want to, as after I conserve this tree, I want to trade carbon. Yes. So this is what is involved in mining. There will be extractions. There will be there will be exploration, extractions, and so the land will be disturbed like this, and so on and so forth. It's likely that you will be moved from this place maybe to another, and then now you now engage the community, because at that point you are just telling him what it is. But what do you from my end, I'm offering to provide you with compensation. Yes, for you to go and maybe have a house or buy a house in another place, and then continue with your activities that you are doing on this area, but just on another place. But then you are communicating that with the community who may not understand the financial implications, I may call them, but also the how much is involved in that. Because we have seen in certain communities where certain households are able or comfortable with getting a 15,000 for displacement, and they are busy signing forms. But where is the 15,000 going to take them? Like, I don't think you can even construct a decent house in that. Yeah. So that's where now we want these companies, investors, as they go into communities, they should offer actually that financial literacy, that this is what is going on and the project is this. And because then they are coming with financial proposals, with advice from lawyers, but that is against the community who has no access to financial proposals, access to lawyers. So how are you going to invest in such a community and maybe, let's say, even enter an agreement without uh, with such weak bargaining power from the community? They don't understand what is really involved. They don't understand how much they are going to lose. So all those are the things that we need. The issue of giving them information that they need to know without even them seeking it. Okay, so you've come to invest in our community. What are you going to do for us? No, we should be able to go to the communities with information and also be able to hear them to what extent they could be supported, and also be real with the conversation aspect, because it's crucial that someone is going to let go of their usual way of livelihood and they're going to change. So you want to put them in a position that they will be comfortable still, even as they change from another, they continue from another point or another land.
All right. So still on mining, what are critical minerals and why is Zambia strategically positioning itself? And I know that this has been the talk, even on a global scale when it comes to mining.
Yeah. Critical minerals have been identified to be minerals that would support a transition to clean energy, where we see less of fossil fuels, or less of, can I say, energy that doesn't promote climate change agenda. Yes. So those minerals in Zambia could mean copper, cobalt, lithium, and many other. And I think Zambia, seeing that it's the largest producer of copper, it's trying to position itself in a market. It's trying to market itself in that regard. And we have seen the commitments that have been made, such as the production of 3 million metric tons by 2031. But also we have seen the enactment of the Minerals Regulation Act. Yes, we've seen how the commission has been allocated with so many functions, that is to sort of consolidate the regulation system. But also the National Critical Mineral Strategy, which has been also are created. So all these are pointing to how we want to position ourselves strategically. But again, it goes back to, in as much as we want to mine to attain the 3 million metric tons by 2031, this is a resource that will finish. This is also a resource that require land use, and land again involves people. So there's again also needs to ensure that we strike that balance. So it's important that in as much as we are positioning ourselves into being a source for critical minerals, we also take into account what that will leave for us. How are we going to benefit from that? And are we even at a position to start seeking for clean energy, for example? Those are the questions we should be able to answer. Yeah.
While you're still watching the People Space podcast with me, Wenson Mavora, we are discussing land administration, of course, looking at it from a developmental and economic perspective. What next when the natural endowments that this country is blessed with run dry? That is the question that we're exploring, and of course, other alternatives that we can consider, ensuring that there's a balance between land usage for economic purposes and the people that are involved. Now, before we go on a break, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind each and every one of you that you can win yourself some amazing and fantastic prizes, ranging from t-shirts, mug cups, and of course, other exciting memorabilia that you can have for yourselves. All you simply have to do is remain interactive on our platforms where the People Space podcast broadcasts, that is YouTube under the handle the Center for Trade Policy and Development, and Facebook, and CTPD Zambia on TikTok, Twitter, which is now X, and of course, other platforms. So, on any of the episodes, if your comment garners enough traction, you might just be that lucky winner that can get these fantastic and amazing prizes, the hoodies, the shirts, and many more. And also, we do offer an opportunity for you, if at all you so wish, to be able to have an interactive session with some of the guests that we bring on this platform, to be able to just have one-on-one conversations and learn one or two things. That particular avenue also can get you that opportunity. So let's get talking, let's get interactive. See you on the other side.
Super fantastic and vidocious. My name is B Flow. Catch me on the People's Space podcast. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the People Space podcast. And we are obviously discussing the issue of land administration, looking at it from an economic perspective. How can a balance be stricken between the investments that are currently being poured into land and the people that are being affected as a result of these investments? And that is exactly what Lucy Musonda, who is a legal researcher from the Center for Trade Policy and Development, is providing some perspectives on. Lucy, welcome back. And obviously, we were, I like where we left from, where we were talking about the strategic minerals, the critical minerals. And you mentioned something very important. It all comes back to the same thing, the need to strike a balance, because all these critical minerals as well, one day will run out. And what I was thinking as you were talking about that was the issue of value addition. Are we doing very well when it comes to value addition or diversification in this sector? Because somebody was saying, we talk so much about let's leave mining, let's go to farming, let's leave mining. But the former mines minister, Richard Musuka, one day challenged and said, have you ever done research as journalists, as concerned stakeholders, to diversify, to look at the diversification opportunities within the mining sector before we can say, let's leave the sector and go out? What are your thoughts on that?
I think my simple thoughts are Well, to start with, yes, we've been singing about value addition and supply chains and diversification. Yes, it is crucial, but I feel we are easily satisfied once we see the corporate tax coming, once we see the royalties coming and the licenses fees are paid. And I feel like that's where we just end. I don't think we really sit down to interrogate, because if we're talking about value chain and diversification, then we would have seen sustainability of jobs that we so-called are being created in these mining sites. But we don't see such. And we could have seen also how the mining sector would have helped such communities close to the mining sites. But we haven't seen that. So I think we haven't really paid it particular attention to be intentional about value addition, but also to be intentional about the benefits that are being generated and how we are investing those benefits in other sectors to sort of help the community at community level. At national level, we report the taxes that we have raised. We report the royalties and all the revenue that we have collected from the export earnings. But at community level down there, I don't think we have been intentional about it.
I like that answer. I'll be very honest with you. I like that answer very much. And I mean, for me, Lucy, it just, it just challenges, the people that are responsible, for these particular important undertakings, especially within government structures. Once that tax comes in, when you go back to communities, as you've indicated, do we really see a correlation, to say, yes, we collected this much, but this is the extent to which it has helped to uplift and develop this community? So that is why I like that answer, Lucy. But anyway, moving on, we are, we talked about critical minerals and, what they are. What I want to find out is, when it comes to some of the commitments as a country, what are some of the commitments that we've made in relation to critical minerals, and what do those commitments mean to our country and again to the community where these critical minerals will obviously be extracted from?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have made commitments such as the 3 million metric tons production by 2031. We've got the national critical mineral strategy that's supposed to run, I think, up to 2028. And so these thousands of tons to be extracted means that a lot of explorations are going to take place, extractions are going to take place. And at national level, at the economy level, we are saying that this is obviously going to increase our FDI in terms of foreign direct investment. Like, this is going to attract investment. But also we are saying that we're going to see economic growth should this be handled well. And we are hoping to see technology transfer as well during these extractions, because then we have got FDI coming in and they're able to share the technology transfer with the local community. Yes. And at community level, we expect to see obviously job creation. That's if investors do not come with their people. Yes, but also we expect to see change maybe in livelihoods. So again, change in livelihoods, it goes both ways. It could disrupt the way they have been living to in a good way, that maybe these communities would come up with businesses that would even support the investors who are coming into that community. But to another extent, on the other hand, actually, it would come with bad disruptive in the sense that communities will no longer have to use the land the way they've been using it. And if there's no, again, composition or way of offering alternative livelihoods, then it leaves them with nothing. So those are some of the positives that we could speak to, that would see with the Russian critical minerals. Yes, we're going to see job creation, we're going to see livelihood changing either for good or bad, but also we are going to see at national level, like I've discussed, technological transfer, but also the increase in, or the growth in economic growth. But on the other hand, we've got issues like I keep on saying of displacement. If not handled well, people will be moved from their places. And also, if the jobs that are being created don't extend beyond the lifetime of the project, then they'll be meaningless once the project is done. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the important clauses or content of these community development agreements. What exactly should they have that would protect host communities, say, from marginalization?
Okay, so some of the provisions that they should have, the scope of the project, obviously, and also the aspect of participation and monitoring, because this is where we're saying that participation of community is key, and they need to know about what the project will be, how long it will run, and what it intends to bring. So under these agreements is where you see now communities and the investor sit down to say, we want to see job creation, schools built, or any other economic development, but also with regards to environmental management. How are you going to leave our land once you're done with the extraction or with any other with the project itself? So we see all these clauses, but also the other important one is the sanctions, but also being able to seek justice should this contracts or agreement be breached. Both parties are at liberty to seek justice. Either it could be through mediation or arbitration, or even the courts if these alternative dispute resolutions fail. Yeah, so parties, whether it's the investor who has breached a clause in that under that agreement, or it's the community that has breached, they are at liberty to seek remedy and also apply sanctions if it's a project coming to an end, or a license being suspended, or a community facing a sanction for having breached the contract. So this is why we really call for such agreements to be in the law, and also communities being aware of them. But what's again key is communities being able to understand, or being able to having the capacity to negotiate, because you can't enter into a contract with someone who doesn't have equal bargaining power as you. Then it will become imbalanced, and it might actually even fail to work for the base of the community. So if communities do not understand what to put in that agreement, it could be easy for them to agree with whatever they are being offered. If it's, let's say, if it's in terms of benefit sharing, they say we'll be giving you 15%. Even if it's very little, they will be okay with that, because they don't understand to what extent the project is, then the involvement, but also the benefits that are being realized out of such a project. Yeah.
That brings me to the question of who really are the key, or what are the roles and who are the key actors when it comes to community development agreements? Because as you've mentioned, in the process, the corporates, I'm not saying all of them are bad.
Yeah.
The investors, I'm not saying all of them are bad, but oftentimes we've seen things like elite capture. We've seen things like lack of transparency and accountability at the end of the day. So what are the key roles and who are the important actors when it comes to community development agreements?
So the key actors are actually just the two of them, the community and the investor. So the investor is crucial because he's the one coming with the money and proposing to have certain development or projects done in a particular area. And the community are hosting that, and to some extent they are affected. It could be displacement, it could be a change of land use, or in any other way. And now we have got the government, but the government also plays a crucial role. And this is why it is important to have actually CDAs that are coming from a legislature, a piece of legislature or a law, because then it will be binding and it requires some action from the government. And to this extent, the government, what other jurisdictions have done is impose a role on government that before a license is issued, you must have entered into a CDA with an affected or a host community. Yes. And they also produce a model, like a model CDA, what it would look like, what a CDA would look like, and ensure that such an investor and community agree on those provisions. And so the government is going to review that CDA before the license is issued. It's going to review that CDA and ensure that all the requirements are met. And if they are not met, then a license will not be issued. So that's where the critical part of the government comes in. While the agreement is between the community and the host, but the government has a critical role to play in that, in ensuring that the provisions are fair for both parties. Yeah.
So, from a Zambian perspective, what are some of the common failures or pitfalls, that we've seen when it comes to CDAs implementation, and how can we avoid them?
So from a Zambian perspective, what we have seen, under the mining sector so far on the work that we have done, we haven't seen much of CDAs or community development agreements. And this is why we're advocating to have community development agreements included in the Minerals Regulation Commission Bill Act now, because it's important that investors, whether it's large, small, or artisanal, they should all be able to enter into a community development agreement and communicate how they are going to work together with the community. But we have seen in other large-scale land-based investment, like carbon trading, for example, where communities do enter into some agreements which they don't really understand, because this is again another area that is sort of controversial at the moment, and lack of transparency is an issue, where communities are told to maybe propose a percentage, and if they propose such a percentage, they wouldn't know against what figure are we proposing this percentage. Is it 1 million that you are making as the total profits, or is it 50,000? Kwacha, yeah. So how do we make such a proposal? Yeah. So these are the challenges that we see, like lack of transparency in terms of the benefits that are being realized, how much is actually being realized, and so if that information is communicated with communities, then they'll be able to say, okay, then the 50% you're asking for is reasonable. Otherwise, it's an issue of, again, transparency that we have noted in certain projects, but also communities not knowing how to negotiate, like capacity is lacking. Yeah. And the investor always have an upper hand, obviously, in terms of negotiation.
As we get to wrap up our conversation, Lucy, unfortunately, what are some of the policy recommendations that you can make to government to ensure that large-scale land-based investments can benefit not only the country at a macro level, but also the communities down there?
I think some of the recommendations would be, I know we just recently enacted the Minerals Regulation Commission Act, and obviously there's a window that we have to wait for amendments and whatnot. But what we can do is, through regulations, we could compel any person with a mining license, for example, to enter into a CDA with a community. That is one of the best way we can address this. But also, there's need to get to speak, or to get to have investors to build capacity. It is possible that maybe a first sum of investment under that agreement that you have created, a first sum of investment could be just towards capacity building of the communities. This could even help them in terms of addressing issues like jobs and how to manage funds when they are given in case of displacement, so that we don't go back to the issue of, you give them a 15,000 and then they do what with that? Maybe they just build a small house and that's it. How do they sustain themselves beyond that? But also the need for free, prior, informed consent to be given to communities as we embark on these large land-based investments. There's need to inform the communities, in fact, make them partners, not just side beneficiaries. Then there's need for these two actors to work together. And for them to work together, they need to have the information rights. In as much as the investor is bringing the resources, the land belongs to the community. So there's need to strike a balance between the negotiating powers for the investor and the negotiating powers for the community, ultimately to have a contract or even the developments that benefit both parties. Yeah.
Finally, Lucy, as we close, for community members, civil society, journalists, and investors, what exactly should they be watching for? And we're talking about early warning signs and signals to know that an investment is likely to be merely extractive and not necessarily inclusive?
I think some of the signs, maybe what I've spoken to, is the needs for local participation. If an investor only visits a chief without involving the community members, then definitely that's not going to be an inclusive one, because the chief has got his own interests or her own interests. And if she doesn't extend the communication to the community, then it ends there. Communities will be subject to displacement without compensation. But also the need to, for FPIC, like I've mentioned, they need to provide information to communities, provide communication, accurate information with communities so that they understand that this project is coming on board and these are the impacts. They are social, economic, but also environmental impacts. So all those things needs to be taken into account. Otherwise, then it will just be a project where we just benefit to the extent of getting tax, to the extent of getting royalties and maybe license fees. And so it doesn't really, again, trickle down to the communities.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
Thank you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Lucy Musonda, all the way from the Center for Trade Policy and Development, talking about land administration, but also delving into the community development agreements that are critical when it comes to ensuring that there is equal beneficiation when it comes to large-scale land-based investments in different communities in the country, and also giving us an opportunity to be able to know what is being done in other jurisdictions and how Zambia can be able to adopt some of the best practices to ensure that large-scale land-based investments are inclusive and benefit not only the coffers at national level, but also the pockets deep down in the communities. And you can stand a chance to win yourself some amazing prizes by simply remaining interactive on the platforms that the People Space podcast does broadcast. We are talking about YouTube and Facebook under the handle the Center for Trade Policy and Development, and CTPD Zambia on X, formerly Twitter, and also TikTok and other social media platforms. If your comment happens to be able to spark further conversations on these important topics, then you might just be the lucky winner that will walk away with exciting prizes that range from t-shirt, markups, hoodies, shirts, and other exciting stuff that you cannot afford to miss out on. From me, Wenson Mavoro, see you next time. And remember, let's keep the conversation going. That number markers. He's just retaining that from here. So you can do that outside.
Hi, my name is Lucy Musonda. Catch me on the People's Space podcast, where I'll be discussing the importance of community development agreements in large-scale land-based investments in Zambia.